Badass, shaving his knuckles for justice. Always great to see on the stream, Matt. Seems like forestry management factors in to these fires too, not to take away from the climate change, of course. You're bringing up an excellent point. There's so many factors in this. To me, how they should be going, they should be like, you've got climate change, then you've got forestry management, right? Then you've got corrupt stuff like, remember last year, PG&E, their old power lines caused the fires, and there's that corruption. There's so many factors to this. There's just city planning. We can't just keep expanding cities out and out and out like that. Then there is much more that needs to be done from a forestry standpoint. There needs to be the state of California, and Oregon and Washington need to do more water reclamation. California didn't know, when it hit in 2015, we were on like year 5 of really bad droughts. And Governor Brown, who did some good things, he was way more lefty when he was younger, the first time he was governor. This second round, he was a little Pelosi-esque. But we were having huge drought, and he passed all these measures to use less water and reclaim it. And in the city of LA and Santa Monica, where I live, the city was giving out like free rainwater barrels and stuff like that. And we reduced the state's consumption by 20% in a matter of months, which was huge in a state of 45 million people, right? But of course, the thing we always kind of forget to bring up is, oh, that's right, all the water we spend on dairy cows and cattle. This is again why I'm vegetarian. The amount of money that's spent. You drive up the 5 freeway in California, there's several, they're nicknamed Cowschwitz. These cattle yards, they smell horrible. The methane gas is bad for the environment, not to mention all the water and grains, the water to grow the grains to feed the cattle, the water to feed and water as well. It takes so much water to come up with one hamburger. It's unbelievable. So there's those issues. We should all be going more plant-based. The state should be like, no, we should be having more high-speed rail. The state of California has done some things, incentives for electric cars and stuff like that, but there's so much more that we need to do. We need to save every drop of water. California is a desert. We need to save every drop of water, right? When it rains, because in the summertime, that's why fire season is September, October, because we're coming off of 3 or 4 months of not much rainfall at all throughout the whole state. This is typical of this part of the world, this region, right? So we got to save every drop of water. Then there's stuff like, obviously, we don't have it. If we're going to use prison labor, first of all, pay them decent money. And if they get out and they put their lives on the line and they got out on good behavior and they fought fires to save California, then let them get jobs. They've paid their debt to society. Let them. We didn't have enough firefighters to deal with these fires. We haven't had enough, thanks to Kamala Harris and people like that. So there's that. There's so many ways to deal with this. So you bring up an excellent point. But that's the thing with climate change. Yes, it is definitely tied to climate change, which there's this cascade effect of how all these other things economically, socially have to be dealt with. And so there's so many things we should be dealing with. I mean, there's so many things we should be dealing with. I mean, if we save every drop of water, again, I talk about this, instead of building oil pipelines, why not water pipelines? What if we had a system of pipelines all throughout the country? So like in the summertime, when a lot of times the northern states or the east, even the southern states, sometimes they're getting too much. Like in the spring in Iowa, and not this spring, but the spring of 19, the Midwest had huge flooding. It took away a lot of crops. What if we had a pipeline system? I'm no engineer, but this has to be doable, that drains the water and stores some of it for that region, and then also sends it to the western states and the southern states that are, especially like if a state is dry. I remember years ago, Georgia had really bad droughts. We could have just said, oh, here, Georgia, here's a bunch of water. And the Western states can have all this extra water. So what if we would have then, we had more water just set aside to fight these fires? We had like I don't know, a flooding system. I don't know. I'm not an engineer, but I'm just throwing ideas out there. Instead of fracking permits like Governor Newsom does, why don't we come up with, like, we know the fires are coming. How can we get out ahead of them? Talk to forest management people, talk to firefighters and say, what could we put in place? You know, is there some type of, I don't know, a aqueduct system that we put through the forest so that if a fire starts, we can kind of just flood it out and just put it out like that? You can't tell me there isn't a way to do all this shit. You get a bunch of engineers and smart people in the room, we can figure this out. But no, we gotta do fracking. We gotta do fracking. We gotta build pipelines. I mean, but Graham, what if a water pipeline breaks? Okay, flooding is bad. It could potentially hurt people, but it's not going to contaminate the water in the soil for centuries.
Where Aboriginal Australians have been using cultural burning for thousands of years. Fire to burn vegetation to enhance the health of the land and its people. Indigenous communities instinctively know how to work with the land. That is a great point, and goes back to our other question that Matt asked about forestry management. Yeah. One of the things that's happening in the LA area, in San Bernardino, I was watching a firefighter, one of the fire chiefs, talk about that's an area that the San Bernardino Mountains haven't had a forest fire in recorded history. So it's a tinderbox. This is another, going back to the question and the issue of that Matt brought up, which is a very valid one, of forestry management. That's why you do controlled burns. It's what Indigenous people realize, like, it can heal the soil. It needs to be burned. But when we don't do controlled burning, we just build houses everywhere and there's droughts and we don't deal with any of it, then we have this disaster. And then we of course, our out of control capitalism needs to hire prison guards at $1 a day and then not give them jobs as firefighters outside of it. It's just sucking all of the natural resources dry, so it's again a tinderbox, making it more and more dangerous. If we did what Indigenous people had been doing for thousands of years and did it that way, we wouldn't have millions of climate refugees. So, such a great point, Annabelle. God, it's like Mother Nature had this system worked out and Indigenous people figured it out a million years ago. Like, oh, this is how you live in harmony with the land. And the jackwagons from Europe started colonizing and murdering everybody for money and trade routes and silver and gold. Oh, God. Oh, thanks for bringing that up, Annabelle. Thanks for supporting the show.